He survived cancer, then his wife destroyed him with 4 words. How does he come back from this? He was 13 years old, standing in his kitchen, holding his mother's unlocked phone. And what he saw on that screen was something a child should never, ever have to carry. Some things stay with you. Not because you want them to. Because you had no choice. He was around 13 or 14 when it happened. His mom left her phone on the counter unlocked, and he saw the texts. She was cheating with a neighbor down the street. There were selfies. She was calling this man sexy. And then, because life is occasionally extraordinarily cruel to children who never asked for any of it, he also saw an explicit photo from the man. He was 13. He saw that. He told nobody. He went to school the next day and rode the bus with this man's sons, boys he knew, boys he eventually played football with, and he carried this secret completely alone for years. Every morning he climbed onto that bus and sat near those boys, maybe even laughed with them, maybe even talked about the game on Friday night, all while holding something about their father that no child should ever know. That is the kind of cognitive weight that does not show up on the outside. You cannot see it. But it is there, pressing down on everything, quietly, invisibly, every single day. I need to stop here and just acknowledge that for a moment. At the age most kids are worried about homework and making the team, this boy was holding a secret that would have broken most adults. He did not have the emotional vocabulary to process what he saw. He did not have a safe person to run to. He just absorbed it, packed it down somewhere deep, and kept moving. That is not strength born of confidence. That is survival born of having no other option. And the distinction matters, because we often celebrate that kind of quiet endurance without stopping to ask what it actually costs the person doing it. His home life was already volatile before the discovery. His parents had always fought badly. The communication between them was terrible. The household was a tense, unpredictable place to grow up in. Dinner tables have a way of telling the truth even when no one at them is speaking. You learn to read the silences, to track the temperature of a room the moment you walk through the door, to know which version of the evening you are walking into before anyone says a word. He had been doing that kind of emotional labor his entire childhood, long before he ever picked up that phone. So in some twisted way, what he saw on that phone was almost a confirmation of something he had already felt in his bones for years, which was that his family was broken in ways that nobody would admit out loud. But confirmation and proof are different things, and what he had now was proof. Visual, undeniable, explicit proof. And he had to carry that alone. Then came his senior year of high school, and his dad went on a so-called work trip and ended up in another city with a woman he grew up with. They had apparently been talking for months. And here is the part that gets me. He says he was not really fazed by his father cheating. And you understand why, once you know the full picture. His moral compass around his parents had already been completely recalibrated by what he witnessed at 13. His mother had done it first, had gotten away with it, had continued living in that house in a different bedroom like nothing fundamental had been destroyed. So when his father did the same thing years later, it registered more as confirmation of a pattern than as a fresh shock. There was no gasp. No crumbling. Just a quiet, exhausted recognition that the people who were supposed to model love and loyalty for him had both chosen something else instead. That is what long-term exposure to dysfunction does. It does not just hurt you once. It trains your nervous system to expect a certain level of pain as normal. It shifts your baseline. Things that should feel catastrophic start feeling almost inevitable. And the most insidious part is that you do not even notice it happening. The recalibration is so gradual, so quiet, so built into the ordinary texture of your daily life, that you can spend years not realizing how far your sense of normal has drifted from what it was supposed to be. He eventually confronted his mother in June of last year. They had gotten into a big fight, she was drunk, and he told her he knew. He had known for roughly a decade at that point. And he said he could tell she was shocked that he knew. Picture that moment. A woman standing in the middle of an argument, probably expecting it to go the way all their arguments had gone before. And then suddenly her adult son says something that rewinds time by 10 years and lands her back in a kitchen she thought she had gotten away clean from. All the years she had spent not thinking about it, not accounting for it, convinced herself it had simply dissolved with time. And then there it was, delivered back to her by the child who had never been able to put it down. She had spent all that time assuming her secret was safe, never once suspecting that her teenage son had seen everything on that unlocked phone, had processed it alone, had carried it through high school and into adulthood without saying a word to anyone. The confrontation did not bring the relief he might have been hoping for. He says he told himself it was in the past, tried to frame it as forgive but not forget, tried to give himself a version of closure. But the fact that he is writing this post suggests that the closure was not quite as complete as he wanted it to be. He despises her. He said that directly and clearly. Not with performative drama, but with the flat, exhausted honesty of someone who has been sitting with a feeling for a very long time and has finally stopped pretending it is not there. And I think that is actually a more honest and healthy place than where he was for the years he was pretending everything was fine. There is something quietly courageous about finally letting yourself feel the thing you have been managing for a decade. It does not look like courage from the outside. But it is. The part of this story that I think deserves real attention is what it did to his ability to connect with other people. He says these events affected his close relationships. He struggles to open up. Think about what that actually looks like in practice. Someone tries to get close to him and he does not know how to let them in. Not because he does not want connection, but because every formative lesson he learned about the people who were supposed to love him unconditionally ended in concealment, in betrayal, in the quiet discovery that the people you trust are capable of living double lives right in front of you. When that is your foundation, trust does not come naturally. It feels like a trap. And so you keep people at a careful distance, not out of indifference, but out of a very deep and learned sense of self-protection. He is planning to move states, go no contact with his family, and eventually talk to a therapist. And I want to focus on the word eventually, because I think it is doing a lot of work in that sentence. Therapy is something he acknowledges he needs but has pushed to the future. And I understand why. When you have spent a decade training yourself not to talk about the hardest things, walking into a room and talking about the hardest things feels like asking your body to do something it has been specifically conditioned to refuse. But here is the thing. Everything he describes, the difficulty opening up, the impact on his relationships, the suppression and the isolation, all of that is a completely predictable and documented outcome of childhood betrayal trauma that never got addressed. He was not broken. He was a kid who saw something he should never have seen and then had to survive it with zero support. The system that was supposed to protect him, the adults in his life, the family structure around him, all of it failed completely. And still he kept going. The fact that he is still functioning, still making plans, still reaching towards something better by saving up to move and acknowledging he needs help, that is remarkable given what he started with. The verdict on this one is also clear. His mother made a choice that she thought only affected her and the man she was seeing. She never once considered that there was a child in that house who might see things, feel things, and be permanently shaped by what was happening under that roof. She did not think about the 13-year-old boy who might pick up a phone and have his understanding of love and family rewritten in a single afternoon. That is the part that makes betrayal in families so much more damaging than betrayal between two adults. It radiates. It hits people who never consented to be in the blast radius. He has spent roughly 10 years managing something that should have been addressed with actual support when he was a teenager. He is 23 now. He still has most of his life ahead of him. And the fact that he can look at all of that clearly, name it, and still be building toward a better version of his life, that matters. Moving away and going no contact is not running. It is refusing to keep putting himself in proximity to people and dynamics that have only ever hurt him. That takes more clarity than most people his age have. And therapy is not eventually. Therapy is now. Because the patterns he is describing, the walls he has built, the way he struggles to let people in, those do not dissolve on their own with time. They need someone to help him take them apart piece by piece. He has already done something enormous by putting words to an experience that lived inside him unspoken for so long. He did the hard thing by finally saying it out loud. Now it is time to say it to someone who can actually help him do something with it. I was 13 when I caught my mom cheating. I carried that secret for a decade and it broke me. He beat cancer. He actually beat it. After everything his body went through, after every needle and every treatment and every terrifying moment of uncertainty, he came out the other side. And the first thing his wife did was sit him down and blow his entire world apart. That is where we are starting today. And I need you to stay with me, because this one is going to hurt. Our guy, 38 years old, has known his wife Sam since they were both 6 years old. Let that sink in for a second. 6. They grew up side by side. Their fathers worked together. Their families were intertwined in that deep, generational way where the relationship is not just between two people but between two entire worlds. They graduated together, built careers, had a proper wedding, and created a family that included 2 kids, now 9 and 6 years old. 11 years of marriage. 32 years of knowing each other. That is not just a relationship. That is someone's entire emotional foundation. Last year, he was diagnosed with stage 1 testicular cancer. Now, I want you to pause and really sit with what that diagnosis feels like. You are in your late 30s. You have 2 young children. You have a wife you have known your entire conscious life. And a doctor tells you that you have cancer. The fear that comes with that is not something you can describe with normal words. It rewires how you see every single day. Suddenly the morning coffee tastes different. Suddenly watching your kids play in the backyard carries this unbearable weight, because your brain is quietly asking how many more of these moments you are going to get. Everything shifts. The future, which used to feel like an assumption, becomes something fragile and uncertain. And you are leaning on the person next to you harder than you have ever leaned on anyone. Sam cried when he told her. She stayed by his side through the operation. She was there through the chemotherapy. From the outside, it looked like exactly what you would want from a partner during the worst chapter of your life. She showed up. She held his hand. She was present. And all of that is real. He saw it with his own eyes. She genuinely was there. She sat with him in waiting rooms filled with that particular kind of fluorescent silence. She drove him home when he was too exhausted to be behind a wheel. She probably held him on the nights when he was terrified and trying not to show it. None of that was fabricated. And somehow that makes everything else even more impossible to process. But here is the part that makes this story one of the most painful things I have ever read. The moment treatment ended, the moment he crossed the finish line of one of the hardest physical and emotional battles a person can fight, she sat him down. And she told him she had been sleeping with a coworker. Someone he had actually met. A man who had existed somewhere in the periphery of his life, in a small and unremarkable way, while he was lying in a hospital bed fighting to stay alive. She had been seeing this person for about 3 months right before his diagnosis. 3 months. And then his world collapsed in a different direction, and she said nothing. She carried that secret into every waiting room. She carried it through every treatment. She carried it home and set it down beside the bed and picked it up again the next morning. I genuinely do not have words. So let us do the math together, because the timeline matters enormously here. The affair happened right before the cancer diagnosis. Then he got diagnosed. Then she stayed by his side through treatment. And then, the second treatment was over, the second the medical crisis was officially closed, she unloaded this confession onto a man who had just survived cancer, whose body was still recovering, whose emotional reserves were completely and utterly emptied out. She chose that moment. That specific moment. After everything. You have to ask yourself what the calculus was there. Was she waiting until he was stable enough to hear it? Was she unable to carry the guilt any longer now that the immediate crisis had passed? Was she protecting herself from the consequences during a period when leaving him would have looked monstrous to everyone around them? Whatever the reason, she made a choice about timing. And that choice landed on a man who had nothing left. He has been shell-shocked ever since. He says the first few days he could barely function, and honestly, that is not even surprising. That is the only reasonable response to what just happened to him. But here is what worries me. He says he has started drinking every day. He cannot look her in the eye. He moves through their shared home like a stranger in a place he used to know by heart. And the darkest part of all of this is that he says he feels like he failed her somehow. That is the sentence that stopped me cold when I read it. He is the one who was betrayed. He is the one who just fought for his life. And somehow his brain has turned this into a story where he is the one who let someone down. He is sitting inside the wreckage that someone else created and apologizing for the fire. That is what betrayal trauma does to people. It does not just hurt you. It rewrites the narrative of your own life in real time. You start going back through every memory, every moment, every conversation, and you see it all differently now. Things that felt like happiness start to feel like illusions. Things that felt like connection start to feel like performance. Every quiet evening that once felt like peace now gets re-examined. Every kind word she said gets held up to the light to see if it was real. And because the brain is desperately searching for an explanation, it sometimes lands on the cruelest possible answer, which is that it must have been your fault. That you were not enough. That something you did or failed to do opened a door that should have stayed closed. The brain will choose self-blame over randomness almost every single time, because self-blame at least creates the illusion that you had some control over what happened. Adding another layer to everything, during his cancer screenings it came out that he has very low testosterone. His libido had been significantly lower for about 2 years before the diagnosis. They had not been having much sex during that time. And I want to be extremely clear about something. Low testosterone is a medical condition. It is not a choice. It is not a character flaw. It is something his body was doing without his permission, quietly and invisibly, and it is something that can be treated and managed with proper medical care. But right now, in this headspace, with everything that has happened, he has latched onto this as evidence that he failed as a husband. He has connected two separate things and turned them into a verdict against himself. His self-esteem, in his own words, is at zero. And when your self-esteem is at zero, your brain starts building a case against you using every piece of evidence it can find, even the ones that have nothing to do with the crime. This is the kind of compounding pain that makes someone feel genuinely trapped. On one side you have the betrayal. On another side you have the physical health issues. On another side you have the cultural and family expectations that make divorce feel impossible, because these families are woven together at a level that goes back decades, and pulling one thread means potentially unraveling something that extends far beyond just the two of them. And underneath all of it you have 2 kids who he loves more than anything, a 9-year-old and a 6-year-old who still need their father to be present and whole. He is surrounded on every side by pain and obligation, and somewhere in the middle of all of that he is trying to figure out if there is any version of his life that still feels livable. He mentions dark thoughts. He says he does not know how to move past this pain. And that sentence, more than anything else in this post, is the one I want to address directly and with complete seriousness. What he is carrying right now is not just relationship pain. It is not just the anger of someone who was cheated on. It is the accumulated weight of a cancer diagnosis, a betrayal, a physical health crisis, a cultural trap, and the complete collapse of a 32-year relationship all arriving at the same time. That is not a load that any single person was built to carry alone. That is the kind of weight that requires other hands. The daily drinking is a signal. It is not a character flaw. It is his nervous system desperately trying to turn down the volume on an unbearable amount of noise. But the problem is that alcohol does not actually turn anything down. It just delays it. It puts a temporary wall between a person and their pain, and while that wall is up, the pain does not disappear. It sits on the other side and waits. And it adds a layer of physical dependency and emotional fog that makes everything harder to process in the long run. It is understandable. It is human. And it is also dangerous for someone who is already standing in a dark place, looking at dark thoughts, with very little left in reserve. Here is something I want him to hear, even though he may not be ready to believe it yet. The low testosterone, the reduced libido, the shift in their sexual connection over those 2 years, none of that caused her to cheat. People in relationships where intimacy has changed due to medical issues do not automatically go find someone else. Millions of couples navigate illness and physical change without one partner deciding to seek out a coworker. What happened was a choice she made. A choice she made repeatedly, consciously, over the course of 3 months. A choice she made while looking him in the face and saying nothing. She did not come to him and say she was struggling. She did not sit him down before any of this and tell him she felt disconnected. She did not suggest counseling before going elsewhere. She found a coworker and she chose that. Over and over again she chose that. Now she wants forgiveness and marriage counseling. And I understand why he feels like he cannot simply walk away. The cultural weight is real. The impact on the children is real. The 32 years of shared history are real. None of that disappears just because she betrayed him. But I also want to be honest about something. Staying in a marriage for cultural reasons or for the children, while carrying this level of unprocessed pain and trauma, does not protect the children. Children feel everything. They read the air of a home more accurately than any adult gives them credit for. They notice when their father cannot meet their mother's eyes. They notice when the house feels like a place where something heavy lives. The most important thing right now, before any decision about the marriage, before any counseling, before anything else, is his survival. Not just physically. He already won that fight, and it cost him everything he had. I mean emotionally. I mean making sure that the dark thoughts do not get louder than the part of him that is still here and still asking questions. A therapist who specializes in infidelity trauma and betrayal would be a starting point. A doctor who can help him address the testosterone issue and speak honestly about what the daily drinking is doing to his body and his mind would be another. And people in his life whom he trusts, people who can sit beside him in the quiet and make sure he is not alone in the moments that feel the most impossible. The verdict here is not complicated, even if the situation is. Sam made choices. Devastating, inexcusable choices at the worst possible time. The affair itself is one thing. But the timing of the confession, waiting until he was at his most vulnerable, his body barely recovered, his defenses completely down, that adds a layer to this that I cannot overlook. Whether she was protecting herself by waiting until the medical crisis was over, or whether she could not carry the guilt anymore now that the immediate danger had passed, she chose to unload this onto a man who had nothing left in reserve. He deserved better than that. He is not a failure. He is not someone who drove his wife away. He is a man who fought cancer while being betrayed, and he is still standing. Barely. But standing. And the path forward is not about deciding whether to stay or go right now. The path forward is about finding one person, just one, who can help him carry some of this weight so that the dark thoughts do not win. Because if he is still here, still asking how to heal, that means some part of him wants to find out. And that part deserves to be protected at all costs. So tell me in the comments, which one of these hit you harder, because I genuinely cannot decide. If this video got to you, leave a like and subscribe, it really does help more than you know.